Coming to you live from downtown San Francisco, it's time for Ralph, Zig, Tycho, and Zig in the Zone.
Paulie B.
Wow, I've graduated to a G.
Well,
I'm an OG.
oh golly,
Oh, golly G.
golly G, Paulie B. You are a terrific producer, and let's talk on the first segment of this show about Edge Studios and what you're trying to do here.
We're just trying to keep the doors open, Zig. That's really what we're trying to do here at Ed Studios. Wow, we're trying to create in a positive, safe environment here in San Francisco. We are a collective of artists. Myself, I'm a writer and stand-up comedian. Zig here's an author, and has been funny on occasion.
Very rarely, very rarely.
And there's a lot of us that do this, but we're always looking for more people like yourselves to create content here in our studios. You can also create content. We were talking about this right before the show. You can actually create content through our studios remotely. If you notice, like today, we have a couple guests on our show. We have Melody and Noel, and they're actually one's in Oakland. Where's Noel from?
Noel is from Southern California.
So he's going to be in Southern California, but he's going to be like, it's like he's going to be in studio here with us. So if you have a dream, you don't need to go to Hollywood to become a star. No, you don't even need to come to San Francisco to create a podcast. You can actually do it from the comfort of your own closet or bedroom or wherever you're doing it, or RV, soon to be RV.
I just wonder why you were in the closet.
Oh, well, you know,
all these years.
After all these years, you would think I'm here in San Francisco. I'd be out of the closet.
Out of the closet.
Well, I'm out of the podcast closet. So you can actually create your own podcast. We'll help you professionally produce it remotely. You could be anywhere in the world. We will help you add intros and exits and organize your guests and how they're going to call in. And you could literally be sitting anywhere in the world and talk to anybody anywhere in the world. Matter of fact, later today we have a person that's coming in just to do a one-off interview with artist Taylor Dane that's going to be performing at Yoshi's in Oakland.
Wow.
So that's kind of cool, but you can do it too. So that, or you can come right into the studio, but we're trying to keep the doors open, to be honest with you.
Beautiful. And you do great work.
Thank you.
Let me just add that. And it's not really work, it's play.
It is, because what do they say?
For both.
Yeah, for absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the old adage, right? If you enjoy what you're doing, it's not like you work a day in your life kind of thing. So,
and conversely, if it ain't fun, it shouldn't be getting done.
Right. It shouldn't be getting done.
Right.
And it's cool because we can actually communicate with people through all different types of services, Facebook, you name it. We do like Zoom, Facebook Messenger, any kind of video messaging service, or any way that you can talk to us through a video. We can actually get you here like you're live in studio. Tell us a little bit about our guests today.
Our guests are in the first segment, Melody. What's your last name?
Melody Mims Montgomery.
Mims Montgomery. She has been a member of the Comfortably Zone Network, and her and I do Can of Chat in the Zone.
Okay.
And we're gonna just continue our Can of Chat in the Zone.
Okay.
With her, and in the second segment, Noel Hind, who is a prolific author, and one of the books he wrote was about the Giants and Dodgers in the good old days.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about the golden age of baseball with him. One of my, in producing this on the fly over the last 4 shows, we're going to talk golden age of baseball on a regular basis, because memories are really all we have. And there are a lot of folks out there that don't realize that the baseball today wasn't like the baseball yesterday.
No, absolutely
Good,
not.
bad, or indifferent.
Right.
Um, there are certain things today, the athleticism um, is incredible. The training, yeah, we're watching baseball at its highest skill level, but fundamentally, baseball was really baseball back in the 50s, 40s, even the 30s, and
It was a purer game.
pure game. Uh, it was
It's where it actually
first of
became America's pastime.
first of all, the game hadn't been bastardized by a number of things. Number one was the DH.
The
Took,
designated hitter, yeah.
it took away a lot of the strategy of the game. Also, there's an expression today: home run hitters make the big bucks. Women like power and stuff like that.
Right.
We have lost in the game the way the game is played. Get them on, get them over, and get them in, whatever it takes to manufacture a run. And
That kind of speaks to today's society in general, right? I mean, if you look at anything, if it's sports, if it's entertainment in any way, it's all been watered down. Do you remember like movie stars from the 40s and 50s and 60s used to be able to do it all? They used to be able to sing and dance and, you know, carry a tune or whatever. So, same thing with sports. Now it's just like, oh, he's the big hitter, we need a home run, or they all don't hit, run, and strategize in their head.
right, and there are also some intrinsic changes in the rules over the past few years that old-time baseball fans, such as me, not me, are turned off to the game entirely.
Right.
So we're going to try to relive those days of yesteryear on a regular basis in the show. And we're going to talk about a lot of things: politics, my kvetch of the week.
What
And
is
that's
the
going to
crutch of the week? Tell us what
the
a crutch is
a
first.
kvetch, which is a complaint in Yiddish,
Okay.
but not literally. It's how you kvetch, how you complain. Certain people are kvetchers, and they're
I might be a crutchy.
well, I'm a yes, but trust
I
me,
get crutched on quite a bit.
I have a lot to fetch on. I see the world as it is today, and my fetch of the week, if you will,
Hmm.
is: why hasn't Michelle Obama replaced Biden on the ticket that in an election that could either save democracy or screw it up?
It's
But
kind of like what basically if she had come in like what's the on the Republican side, there's that Nikki Haley that's coming in and she's
well,
riding in on her white horse and trying to take away those people that are disenfranchised with
and
the
I
other
don't
guy.
blame the disenfranchised people in any party,
Right.
because remember, the way Trump got in was he said the same thing as Nikki Haley was saying:
Right.
the country needs change. And it did need change, but not by him. When he was elected, I thought this is going to be some good theater.
Hmm.
It's what could go wrong. He's a buffoon, but no, he's changed things. He's put our lives at risk, and in he did that with COVID, but nonetheless, Biden has a 37% rating. With all Trump's source, another Yiddish expression,
Right.
trouble, with all his trouble, he's gaining in popularity. And the voting populace today is made up of basically idiots. If you could vote for Trump, and especially if you're a woman and you vote for Trump, something wrong with you.
Right.
No, it's nothing I could do or say that's going to make it different, but I could call attention to the fact that Michelle Obama is our cavalry. She could come in and do it in a nice way. He's just not up to it. Still plenty of time,
Right.
and she's electable, guaranteed electable. She has the Biden machine behind her, and she's as smart as Biden was, and he not Biden, Obama,
Right.
and she could take over where Obama left off and have him as an advisor. She could have him in the cabinet. Now, I don't know if that's feasible, but she looks to be a candidate that's electable no matter what happens with Trump. And we can't afford to take the chance. So my kvetch of the week is people are slowly picking up on her. I've seen a lot of reels and a lot of stuff on the internet, but not fast enough. So pull your head out of your asses, folks. That's the best thing I can say. We don't want to be disenfranchised
Any more than we already are.
We were with
That guy.
that guy who God.
Here, should I put the orange color behind me here? There, the orange
Yeah,
behind
I
me.
don't even like to mention his name. So
We'll just put the color orange and we know who we're talking about. Back to green.
all right, let's go on. I'm going to kvetch at you once in a while.
So our first guest today is tell us a little bit about Melody.
Melody is a cannabis guru.
Okay.
And she runs a group for seniors, which I am, and it's in Oakland, and it's a monthly meeting, and she indoctrinates people to the pleasures of cannabis and the medicinal ways of using cannabis that can literally take folks off prescribed medicine. For me, it is an incredible sedative. Use it as that. Everybody uses it for different reasons. We're going to try to get Melody right here.
Right now, let's see if
Right
we can get
now.
her on the board.
She's waiting for our call.
That's what we do here. We'll see if we can do.
She is.
All right.
Hi.
Melody, if you could do me a favor and just definitely turn your phone sideways and bring your video back, and we'll be bringing you in here now.
Oh, we're going to be on a video?
Yes, ma'am.
I am not prepared for video.
You think
well, we can do. Well, let's do audio. So let's do audio since you're not prepared. But yes, you're on a video podcast.
I'm sorry, this is the first video. Usually we're on the phone.
Yes, we are. But let's go for this.
That's okay. We'll go ahead and just steal your audio away. That's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
That's fine. So tell us a little bit about what you do in Oakland for our seniors.
Okay, so we have a group that we've put together for seniors that smoke cannabis or that are interested in smoking cannabis. And we have a lot of companies, businesses that donate to us, personal growers that donate to us, and we donate the weed to the seniors. So we have an event once a month, and we provide free cannabis during the event. It's a potluck. We have food. We have a wonderful indoor space to party, and we do this once a month, and we give away gifts for them to take home too.
And I believe I've actually met you before, and I believe it was at an event during Christmas time in the building in downtown Oakland.
Yes,
And I
at
want
the
to say it
Oakland
was like the
Trib
fourth
building.
floor of something.
Yeah, we that's where our home base is right now. Flight Delivery has donated their space for us to keep us. We were meeting at the lake for the longest time, and because
That's Lake
our place
Meriden,
before
Michigan,
that,
ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, our place before that got taken, and so we were at the lake, and we really needed a place indoors, and they gave us a spot. So we meet there once a month, and we're indoors. We're out of the rain. It's a lovely spot, and we're really enjoying the space.
And
Good.
so you do a lot of community outreach and stuff. So tell us how seniors get involved.
Mostly, it's word of mouth. We, I will go in. I promote it every place I go. I go to get to a burrito, and I tell people about us. So it's word of mouth, and we will be having a booth this year at the Emerald Cup, so people can come by and see us at the Emerald Cup and talk to us in person. Um, we have a Facebook presence, Tokeland Senior Cannabis Club. So they can follow our Facebook page. They can follow me personally, or any of our members. We post our events on Facebook, and I post them on Instagram as well. Everybody's welcome. We have a lot of youth that come to volunteer for us. So if you're not 55 or plus, but you still want to be involved, you can still come out and do things for us that, we need. We need people to sometimes drive people or pick people up and bring them to the event, or just generally lift things for us, carry things for us. Go over there and get that bin for me and bring it over here so I can make bags to give out to everybody, that kind of thing.
I'd
So
be glad
we're
to help
more
a
than
little old lady across the street with some pot.
well, there you go. You just, yeah, let me know, and we'll be glad to have your help with some pots.
When is your next meeting, Melody?
It's always the third Friday of every month. So what does that make it this month? I have,
I will
let's
go and
see,
check
one, two,
as
three, the
you're
16th,
okay.
the 16th, the
Okay.
16th. It's the third Friday of every month, 4 p.m. till approximately 8 p.m. We've been going a little earlier, leaving a little earlier because of the weather. But we're always there at 4, and we stay until it's time to go home, whenever that is.
Okay. Can you do us a favor as a group, as a network, as listeners? Can you give us a brief tutorial on the different ways of ingesting? Used to be, let's smoke a joint. It evolved to let's put it in a bowl. It evolved to let's put it in a bong. But it's gone way further than that. Give me an example. Give me some ways that people are ingesting and what works for them and doesn't work for them, or what is more likely to work for them than not.
So that's a big question, my love.
Well,
Um,
that's what I
um,
use.
you asked the big questions. Okay, so I mean, we can smoke it. We make capsules out of it, so we can actually, infuse olive oil or coconut oil and put it in capsules so that you can just swallow it. You There's tinctures that you can make with oils, and you just put those in your mouth under your tongue, so there's no smoking involved. We have new vape pens where we're putting in cannabis oil in a vape pen, and you put it on a little battery stick, and you smoke it that way. There's new vaporizers. There are new things. Well, it's not specifically new, but the newer things are, for us old folks, are called dabs, where it's a concentrated cannabis product, and you have to have other tools to ingest or smoke it. But then there's always the old school brownies. I mean, don't forget, we still like our brownies and our other kinds of edibles where you just put some weed in some things and cook it and eat it.
Well, it's
Yeah.
kind of funny because you mentioned like dabs. And so a lot of people, if they're 50 and over, might not know exactly what dabs are, even if they, you know, grew up in the 60s and 70s. Um, but we think of it, we used to do that kind of stuff too. We had like what they called honey oil and hash oil. And
Yes,
and so a lot of these things are kind of a callback, kind of a throwback, right, to a lot of those things. And it's just updated for current consumers.
yes. Honey oil. Say, I mean, that's when I first. That's probably something that I tried when concentrates first came out, and I remember going into the dispensary and there being this little spot for this stuff, and they had this stuff called earwax, and I was like, ew, why would we want to do anything called earwax? And it was just cannabis oil that was real thick and dark. And it was a gross name for something that could get you very high. But
And yeah, that, I was thinking of the stuff back in the 70s and 80s that it was more pure, like what we see dabs now. But I remember that stuff too, like the earwax stuff when clubs started coming out, like '98 here in California and 2000. And I remember a lot of that was made with what do they call it? BTO. So like butane.
yes,
You really tasted the butane. Nowadays, you taste pretty much the terps, the taste of cannabis, the good stuff.
yes, and with I think one of the newer things that we're doing, which is kind of an old thing again, is the pressing of the rosin. So
Right.
we're having we're having extracts that are made from just from the flower or from the hash products. Hash rosin is just one of my favorite things to ingest right now. It's full of terpenes. It's a full product. I like products, all the dabs I do, but I really enjoy having the rosin dabs better than a BHO dabs. Yeah.
Is there anything you don't particularly enjoy about it? Any method? And
Um. Huh. I don't think so. I
You
think there's
stumped
some
her. You stumped
strains.
her,
Yeah.
Ryan.
well,
Yeah. I don't think so. I like how there's all the ways. All the ways.
oh,
Um.
well, I
I
showed
think
that
there's some
she's
things.
eclectic. I didn't.
Yes. There's strains I don't like. Like I stay away from sativa strains. I don't like the effect of sativa strains. It makes me very wired
Me
and
too.
sometimes that paranoid feeling that you don't like that I'm not trying to get. So when people say they don't smoke weed because it makes them paranoid, my answer is, "Oh, you smoking the wrong kind then."
Yes, you
Hmm.
are.
Um,
Yeah,
right? If it doesn't make you feel right, it's because you have the wrong kind. You need to experiment more.
that's not to say sativa isn't for everyone.
That's true. That's what I say. If it doesn't make you feel right, then
Right.
you have to experiment more.
That's
For
what I
me,
like
I don't
about the
do
drug.
sativa.
It's a very personal thing, and it puts you in touch with oneself. And alcohol doesn't do that. Certainly, cocaine doesn't do that. And God knows what other drugs are on the market now that don't do that. So, boy, we're getting an education. Melody,
It's not a one size fits all. It's a what size fits you. You have to go try a little bit, and you have to not and don't be afraid. I mean, people, it's some weed. You're going to feel some effects for a little bit, and then it's going to go away. So if it's not the effect that you're looking for, then there's other strains available. It's not a one stop. This is all we have. There are many different strains and very many different ways to ingest it till you find the thing that's right for you. If you're trying to get out of pain, I mean, we have topicals. If you don't want to get high because you got to go to work today, we have topicals. that you can use for local pain. So there's so many ways that you can use cannabis to effectively help you have a better and happier life.
And not to be confused with hemp, which can build your home. It can take care of plastic, and it's recyclable. Um, the entire plant is going to save the planet eventually. It's my contention they ought to pump in vaporized pot in every government office going, and you'll see there won't be wars. You can't go
Nope,
to war with the
maybe food wars. It'll be like a food wars thing because who's going to decide what to eat for lunch today?
right, the munchies. We're both from Alameda. When you get the munchies in Alameda, where do you go?
My favorite place to eat is La Calafia Taqueria on Webster. It is. I swear it's the best Mexican food that I've had in my life. I love their carnitas, and that is my spot. I will bring people from Oakland. I'll bring people from Berkeley. Everybody that I know, they're like, "What do you want to eat?" Well, let's go into Alameda.
Yeah.
So just remember the next time you're in there, you'll bring this podcast with you. You'll have it queued up to 26 minutes in, and you'll go, look, I gave you a shout out. And before you know it, you'll have a free lunch right there in front of you.
Or I'll have a sponsor for the show.
Or have a sponsor for, yeah, either our show or for your events.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah,
great. Believe me, from 4 to 8 o'clock on a third Friday, I'm thinking people want some taqueria.
it really is it's such a wonderful event. I look forward to it like every month, um, as something that I get to do, and as something that is fun for me at the same time. Like I'm
And you're
providing a
active.
service,
What do
but
they call you, Mama Bear?
Mama Bear,
Yeah. You
I
help a
am
lot of
I am the
people
Mama
then.
Bear.
You help a lot of people. Can we go back just a second to the way it was before legalization to the way it is now, and how our lives as smokers um, have really changed and been enriched? And let's give credit, at least in Alameda, to our former mayor, Trish, who basically got it done. Can you talk about that campaign?
Oh, that was probably one of my favorite campaigns that I've ever been involved in politically. Um, because we just really wanted. I was going to all these meetings in Oakland about their cannabis life and their cannabis projects and businesses and industry and how they're going to help people. And I was just going in and speaking all the time on the behalf of the patients, and found myself sitting by somebody from Alameda. And we were like, why are we here? Why aren't we talking about this in Alameda? So we literally went to Trish and said, "This is a thing that we want to do," and luckily, this mayor was all about it. She had openly just she was a breast cancer survivor, and she was all about the medicinal use of cannabis. And so we worked hard. There was many meetings. There were many groups of people. At times we would have 50, 75 people, 100 people down at City Hall until 1 or 2 in the morning. We'd order pizza down there, just waiting and eating down there, waiting for our turn to speak. And I'm pretty sure that the council thought that, the later we put us, we'd just go home. We'd, smoke a joint and get tired and go home. But nah, that's not how it worked. We hung in and we stayed. And after, I think it was about a year and a little bit, and many ventures to the street to get signatures from the people of Alameda, um, we finally pushed it through where we have dispensaries are now back in Alameda. And it's wonderful because I have 2 dispensaries within 8 blocks of myself. I can ride my bike to either dispensary that's on the west side.
And you're
And that
you're missing out on Park Social on the other side of town.
I do love Park Social. I will get in my car. They have a parking lot. So
Yes, they
Park
do.
Social is a very special place for especially senior cannabis smokers because we don't have to try to find a parking place a mile away and then walk to the place and then walk back. There's a
That's
parking spot.
that's
There's
called
there's
a schlep. I've
security.
been teaching Paulie B some Yiddish, and the
That's a schlep.
schlep. That's a schlep.
Gotcha.
All right. Um,
Got it down. All right.
good. Hey, Melody, you're terrific. Anything you want to close with?
Yeah, we would love anybody who wants to help. Reach out to me. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Melody Montgomery. You can find me pretty much everywhere out there. Reach out to Tokeland Senior. We are more than happy to have you come and volunteer. We are more than happy to take any products you'd like to or donate to us, and we are more than happy to have people just come and hang out with us and take home some free weed.
And we would love to actually come down the 16th of this month and record a segment there with y'all. That would be great.
That would be cool. That would be very cool. I'll let my board know. We're always up to talk to y'all.
All right. So it's Melody Mims Montgomery. You can find her on Facebook. What's the email for your guys' organization?
We don't really have an email. We just use the Facebook Messenger, or you can email me personally. Um, and you can reach out, message me through Instagram or Facebook. Same name on both.
Right.
Hmm.
Thank you again for joining us.
It was terrific. As usual, we've done this for 2 or 3 years now, periodically, and it's called Cannabis Canna Chat in the Zone. And this is just a continuation of that and more to follow. I hope you'll come back soon.
Thanks, Ralph. Thanks
Hmm.
for having me and listening and being willing to support Tokeland Senior and what we're doing.
We will see you at your next meeting, cameras in tow. So
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. So yeah, we'll be ready for that. We'll definitely be ready for that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, my dear. Appreciate you. Keep up the
All
good
right.
work and keep our seniors medicated and happy.
That's my goal. Happy medicated seniors. Yes, thriving life.
There we go. All right, guys.
All
Give
right.
it up for Melody Mims Montgomery. All right. Good.
All right.
We're back here live in studio. Like we went away.
Yeah.
I
Isn't
kind
it?
of went away in my mind. I was hoping I was one of those Tokeland seniors right about now.
Well, soon enough.
Soon enough.
Believe me.
Soon enough.
And the older you get, the faster the passage of time.
Okay. Absolutely.
And my grandmother had it right. She told me that all of a sudden you wake up and you're me, she said, and you will be. And but that's the good news
Right.
because the privilege of waking up can't be denied, no matter how old you are. And keeping the memories alive, very important.
Right. Oh, I agree. We were just talking about baseball. I mean, there's not enough storytelling in our generation. We need to pass some things on to our generation that is not involving a device that we hold up to our face.
Where's that book that was very well
Oh, I
written?
can. I that well written book. I will put it up on the screen with us.
Okay.
But I was actually. I'm sitting here. I'm multitasking like I always do. You know, I do that, right?
I know,
And
and you're great at it. Multitask for me would be absolutely impossible.
it would be.
I can't chew gum
You
and
can't.
spit at the same time.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say that to myself too, but I think I can. I know in the next hour we have Noel Hind joining us. Tell us a little bit about Noel.
Noah Hind is a prolific writer.
Hmm.
And what's fascinating about Noel is his dad was a mystery writer, and he has he has taken some of his dad's stuff and republished it. And he's going to talk to you about a fascinating life. He's what I call a Renaissance man. And a Renaissance man is a person who can fit in any situation.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and he can do that. And he's got a good spirit. And he helped George and I publish the book through Amazon. And he was a go-between and got that done. And not only that, he's given rave reviews to the book. We had Peter Goldenbach on last week, and Peter wrote one of the forwards of the book,
Right.
and his quote was, "This is brilliant." He read it, and
That's awesome.
so the only person who didn't like hearing that were some of my friends who didn't like me thinking that I was. They knew better.
Right.
I wasn't brilliant. I just asked the right questions in the interviews with these folks, and George was the brilliant person because he put it all into a book and made it readable. Readable?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Readable. Readable.
readable.
Readable.
Either.
So now you have
Neither
the image over your head, like it's digitally hanging over to the right.
Okay.
All right, and
Ah,
and
there
now
you
and
go.
now and now you're going to be talking to me. Now you're going to be talking to your book.
Well, my book can be talking to me. The memories when I thumb through it, and it isn't the kind of book that you need to read in one sitting. You can go to it on the toilet, for instance, sitting there, and all of a sudden you pick up something, and the it just cries. It's like somebody when I read it, it's like somebody else wrote it.
Right.
And it brings back memories of the interactions, the podcast, because it was all done from podcast interviews,
Right.
and it reminds me of the level of intimacy that I've developed with people who I've never met face to face. Just did a podcast with them, and they revealed things to me about themselves that you got to be lifetime friends
Right.
with somebody who would trust you enough to tell you the things that that's what podcasting is all about. And
That's the book. So
that's the book. So please look for it. It's on Amazon. It's $25, 500 some pages with some of the most interesting people on the planet. And that's what this podcast started out as. When it was a podcast, I'd speak to whatever their interest. If you were interesting and you had a passion, you could be on my podcast. And same goes for the telecast, the video podcast. Um, I intend to talk to the most interesting people in the world who have a passion. Um, that's my plan.
yeah, and you do have. You're a passionate man. You're very passionate about a lot of things. You're passionate about life. You're passionate about baseball. You're passionate about your life in Alameda.
My life now. Well, for one thing, I raised my kid in Al.
Okay.
I was a house dad for his first 5 years. The privilege of staying home and actually raising him. I can't tell you the satisfaction got. And I raised him in an environment where there were people that spoke 26 different dialects. In other words, 26, it's a melting pot, Alameda is.
Right.
And his school was, he met people from all different walks of life. And I think that's going to serve him through life. He has had the privilege of interacting with people of all different cultures. And that's going to save him a lot of time.
Well, it's gonna definitely help him in a lot of ways. He hasn't led a sheltered life.
No, he hasn't. And he lived kind of, um, wasn't the typical family. His mother and I agreed agreed to, because she was an um, professional getting on in um, her fertility, and I was a struggling comedian that with no work ethic. It's
Yeah, it's funny how we have that no work ethic kind of guy.
it's kind
Some
of
of us do.
a play ethic, but not a work ethic,
Right.
and that doesn't get you very far um, financially. So she was a professor at Cal State Hayward,
Okay.
an accounting professor, and she was able to finance the whole trip of her son um, being raised by two of us and getting the best of the two. We were so diametrically opposed in many ways, but there were things we had in
And one of them was your son.
one. And before that, it was her comedy that was better than mine.
Oh, really?
We were both struggling. And, she was good. She was very dry. Um, Rest in peace, Diane Satin. She died early. Lupus was the cause and the effects thereof from the, the medication. You have to be on steroids.
Mm.
Eventually, she became, her kidneys failed. She had to have dialysis, home dialysis. Yet her passion continued for teaching. She taught up to the day she died. And she was very instrumental in the Cal State Hayward uh, business program. She was a dean for a while and very talented and uh, capable. When you lose people, that's why my other crutch is mortality. It's going to get us all, and it is getting us all. And when someone dies, an encyclopedia dies with them.
Oh, yeah.
And
And then the world's best novel and everything else. Yeah.
yeah,
Like I said, we got to pass those stories on. We have to, we can't just go into the night. So they say.
no, go calmly into the night
Or
whatever
silently.
that is.
Yeah. Silent.
No, that won't be me.
That won't be, you'll be screaming and
I'll
kicking
be
and screaming.
screaming and kicking and bitching about everything. So, and kvetching.
And fetch.
Tell me about how you got started in this.
What, in podcasting and
Yeah,
comedy or in
the whole-
life?
in the
It
whole thing.
started.
The whole thing. It's we talk off the air. It's all encompassing. It's not just the comedy. It's not just the podcasting. It's the human interaction.
Sure.
You were, I know, having never met them, I know that your parents or the people who raised you and or the people who raised you,
It was a pack of wolves.
okay, but they were
They were a good pack of wolves.
right.
They were fully functional as a pack of wolves.
Talk about some of those people.
Oh, okay. So I joke, haha. I laugh. I joke. Yeah, no, I was raised by my parents. I was raised by a single mother in the 70s. I was a product of the 60s, child of the 70s and 80s. Pretty much raised by a single mother. Um, Stepfather entered into it, and like with most stepfathers, there's usually a little bit of something. There was a lot of something going on, so there was some growing pains for both of us, for all of us involved. But that, fast forward now, 40 something years, because I'm 56, so maybe, 40 something years later, and uh, we have a new and we have a new and respectful understanding of each other, and what we are and what we're doing on this earth, right? Because we're all here to we all have some sort of purpose, if you believe it or not. Even if you're currently on the streets of San Francisco just trying to stay alive, um, everybody's got a purpose, and you just have to find what that one thing is for you, at least. um, with me, it was making others laugh, or I deal with anxiety and depression, and so I'm I try to provide a service that desperately needed growing up. I needed someone to be outgoing and try to be a part of my life and guide and shape me. I was out of my house at an early age, probably 14ish. I was out living in either friends' houses, or after I became 16 and got a car, I was sleeping in my car. Um, I try to provide people with some happiness, even if it's just a smile. No matter where I go, I try to make others happy. I think it's something inside of me that's saying, I desperately needed this. Now I know others need it too. And I didn't graduate college with some degree as a doctor, or, I'm not going to work on the next cure for cancer or whatever. So this is it. This is what I bring to the table. This is what I offer the world, and so that's where I find my most joy. I do it pretty well.
You damn right.
I can make people happy. I can make people laugh. I can only hope I do it when I'm on stage too. So I also perform tonight. I'm performing at the Lush Lounge on Polk Street in San Francisco, and 7:30 show. Come through, please support all local comedy. Um, we are essential workers. I mean, that's one thing I learned during the pandemic, is that we're almost as essential as doctors and emergency care workers, and the police and the fire department. We're really essential. We proved our worth during the pandemic. There was so much. I think if 25 prior to the pandemic, I think if 25% of our country suffered from mental health, probably somewhere at the end of the pandemic it doubled.
And quadrupled in some cases.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so our country, even now, the rebound from our country has been so weird.
You talk about comics having an effect, and it brings me back to the late Gilbert Gottfried.
Hmm.
And after 911, he
What's your
had
emergency? Oh, I'm sorry.
uh, was was it 911? Yes, 9/11. He did a set that is famous. I can't put my finger on what it was, but if you can go to YouTube, everybody out there, because I go to YouTube for virtually everything.
Right.
YouTube, Google, and we're in this world. But you could easily find that set that he did right after 911 that broke an awful lot of things in this country.
Oh yeah, because he did a set that was kind of poking fun at it. And Gilbert was one of those comedians that was, how many people, during his, time on Twitter and all these other things where they would say, "Oh, too soon." I mean, he was the one that got fired from being the Aflac duck
For making disparaging remarks over
about
Japanese people. And
about
that,
the tsunami.
yeah. Oh, okay.
It
That's
was
what
the
it was.
tsunami. Yeah, it was after the tsunami, and he was making jokes, and it was literally the day of, the day after, and so
He was one of those people, those comedians, one of those humans.
right,
They actually can say, and I consider myself, it's a fuck it
yeah,
readily, easily.
sometimes that's
It
the
doesn't serve you
well, sometimes that's the best
necessarily.
way to cope with a tragedy. My wife has told me on many of occasions is everything got to be a joke when it's unpalatable and it's horrific. Yeah, I got to do something with it because I don't know if my brain can deal with that.
You got to get it out. It's cathartic. And that's what it's like. In London, they have guy in that stand up on a soapbox and just ramble. Sometimes, if you walk down Market Street, they've got a guy with a microphone talking about religion.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it is,
And
and
most of the time, the guy, I know which one you're, at least one of them, is that, and it's like Third and Market or something.
yes, yes.
And the guy will yell out there and he'll, I understand maybe people need some faith and need God, but he goes about it the wrong way. He stands in the middle of our city, and I say our city because, damn it, take charge. It is our city. We are the people of the city. He goes out there and spews some vile shit, like and excuse my language, but I'm telling you, he spews things like, "Oh, being homosexual is a sin,"
It's
or
basic fundamentalist Christian belief.
and I get it,
And
but
yeah,
believe it or not, my God actually wants to help you. Whatever that God is,
hmm,
should be an all loving, all caring God.
she should be.
Yes, she should.
And keep that in mind. We don't know what it is. It's more likely that it's a she than it's more likely it's all mythological Cola. But
And I think, sure, I guess we could say it's a he or a she or whatever. I don't think it can be painted on canvas. I think it's probably, who knows? It might look like a cloud.
let me complete
And
my
look at
thought.
Noel wants to come on 15 minutes early. Should we let him on 15
Yeah,
minutes early?
oh, God knows.
All right.
When we get into God,
So,
that's the cue.
well, that's funny. It's funny that we actually heard that happening when it was happening. Just to we'll see what's happening. He's answering. Oh, now we're calling him. I'm so confused. So we'll see if Noel it picks up. Ah, that's funny. So he calls us.
Oh,
I
well,
pick
he's
up.
just testing.
Is that what he's doing?
I'll bet.
He's just testing.
This is confusing to some, but once you get it, it's like Melody had no problem connecting.
Right.
She just didn't know it was a video.
Oh, that was funny.
I said that, but
Well, because I think they're used to your old life because you're not the most tech savvy.
really,
Yeah.
now you tell me.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
And so
Who
she's like, wait, how are you doing this? Steam powered?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And so yeah, no, I get it.
Well, let me just clarify what I was starting to talk about with religion.
Sure.
Organized religion, as we know it, may be and probably is a bunch of crapola, mythological crapola. However, that shouldn't be confused with spirituality.
Right.
And I think organized religion should be taxed, and if it were, it would go out of business within 5 years.
Right.
And but we would be able to educate the curious, shelter the homeless,
Mm-hmm.
and feed the hungry. All at once, just from taxing religion. pure and simple. But spirituality is free. And it doesn't have to be where somebody brings his family and the first thing you're confronted with is a collection plate. And to support folks who have an excess of money, excess. And with money comes power, and we need to separate church and state. Can't do that if they have so much money. But those are the kind of things I'm going to ramble with to make this show interesting, to make this show a part of me.
Right. No, it should be an extension of yourself. It should be a true expression of your true being, and then it can change from day to day, just like anything else does, right?
I want to tell you what Christine said isn't uncommon for a spouse or partner to say to their comedian.
Does everything have to be a joke?
Yes. And yes, it does. It's how you take it. And it may not be funny to Christine or Tally at the moment, God knows. God knows. But what can I say? Goodness. But it has all humor. John Cantu. I don't know if you ever got.
Yeah, I remember who John Cantu was. John Cantu was actually one of the originators of the Holy City Zoo.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he used to work the door and everything else.
Absolutely. John Cantu was.
What's his website? What's his website? Something jokes. Oh. So there's still a John Cantu has been passed for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so he was one of the first ones to get a website up, and it has a whole bunch of jokes and material, and even how to run a comedy club. There's a document on how to run a comedy club. But go on about John.
And
his wife's still around.
Is she really?
I believe so.
I spoke to her
about 5 or 6 years ago.
I would love to get in touch with her and have her as a guest.
That would be great.
Talk about John Cantu.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting people in the world. Didn't please everybody. You can't please everybody. He pleased himself for the most part.
Right.
And that's another one of my life's lessons. It's just the Rick Nelson song. Went to a garden party.
Right.
And that's how life is. Rick Nelson was saying in his lyrics, he didn't care. He's pleasing himself.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to get by that as a society, please ourselves individually so that we can please others and be happy you sit with a pleased life so you can spread it on.
Right.
So, tell me this. What did you pass on to your children about the way you were raised?
That just shows you what a kind of comic. I'm so
sorry. What did you learn? I know you're thinking of this. But you're thinking of.
No, I just thought of some stupid thing that only a comic does. You said, "What did you pass on to your children?" And the first thing I thought was herpes. Sorry, it's a sickness. It is a sickness. So, like in my brain, I'm writing the next punchline, even when you're just asking me a serious question.
No,
so go on. I'm sorry.
Reminiscent of Lenny Bruce.
It's a form of Tourette's. It really is. It's a form of Tourette's.
And most people, when one says something that offends or isn't right, they just say it. They don't think about it.
No, I know.
It's not intentional.
Yeah, if we weren't on your podcast, I wouldn't even have prefaced that. It would have just flew out of my mouth.
Right. And but you have a filter, and we all need filters Sometimes,
Yeah, it's more of a speed bump than an actual filter. It just kind of
uh,
slows me down before I walk into traffic aimlessly. But yeah.
well, my filter arrived, but it was defective, and I had to send it back, and they never sent me another one. So I have no filter, but a quick wit will provide you with that.
Right.
You can't teach it.
No, not at
Uh,
all.
and I'm glad you have a quick wit, and you will answer my question.
Yes.
What did you learn from the way you were raised that you passed on that was good? And what did you learn from the way you were raised that you didn't pass on to your kids because
It was bad.
it was bad?
Well, I definitely
You don't
uh
have to get into the bad. Get into the good. What did
so
you?
the good I really enjoyed was so my mom definitely gave me a lot of real skills to to take with me, to put in my toolbox for the rest of life. Kindness, caring, understanding, not just sympathy but empathy, having empathy for your fellow human being, um, care and compassion. Um, I've always felt, like I said earlier, I when I first became a comedian, it was weird because I was 41 years old. It was 16 years ago, and it was 41. I was 41 years old, and basically, had been writing, had been going through therapy, had told my therapist, "Hey, I think I want to become a stand-up comedian, and I want to go try this material that I've been writing for years, not knowing exactly what I was doing other than just journaling and trying to get shit out of my head." Because I'm telling you, that's a lot of my psychoses or a lot of my issues in my psyche is getting it out of my head and out there. So if it's verbally saying it aloud, it could be while you're driving down the road or in a shower or whatever, and getting it out of your head. And in other ways, it was just scripting, writing it down, um, seemed to help me cope. And so anyway, so I ended up coming here doing comedy, and I ended up for 3 weeks. I came up here and I was writing, and I was going to a bar that had an open mic, and I never performed, and I just watched people. And it was funny because the host of the show came up to me like the first week and goes, "Oh, you must be Tom." I'm like, no. He goes, "I'm looking for Tom. He signed up for a spot, an email. You must be Tom." No, okay. So he goes off looking for Tom. The next week, "Oh, you must be Bill. You're Bill, right?" No. He goes, "Oh, I'm looking for Bill because he signed up online for a set." And it was like week 3, he finally comes up to me and goes, "So what's your name?" And I said, "Oh, I'm Paul," and introduced him. And he goes, "Great." He goes, "You're next." And I said, "Oh, I haven't signed up." And he goes, "No, well, you're next." I go, "What do you mean I'm next?" And he goes, "I've been watching you at the back of this room writing for 3 weeks. It's not that you don't have anything." He goes, "I don't care. Just go up there and share." And I did 3 minutes. And when I left that bar that night and started walking back towards Caltrain to go home, literally started crying because it took me, and I'm kind of feeling emotional now, which is kind of weird, but I literally felt like, oh shit, here I am, 41 years old. I just found my calling in life and I suck at it. And so, again, first time I think I did 3 minutes or 5 minutes. If it was five, it felt like a million years, but I think it was only like three. And so,
But then you had the gumption
or the Werenthal to follow
to
through.
follow through after that. That's ballsy.
Well, okay, so it's a
It's a
love. It's a
ballsy.
it's a love of the game. It's like I said. It's like I had an epiphany. I guess some people have, they say that priests or nuns get a calling. They hear God saying you need to live a life of service. I swear, I heard in my soul. It wasn't like some voice out in the distance saying you need to do this for the rest of your life. It was, you finally found it. Holy shit, you won the lottery. It's only a scratcher for a free ticket, but you won the lottery. And that's how I felt. It was just incredible. I know we're getting really close to bringing in Noel, and this time we'll call him and see if he can make it.
I'll bet he'll answer.
I bet you he will. So again, tell us a little bit about Noel before we jump into that. But thank you for asking me about comedy because it's really what motivates me. It really does. It's the thing that makes me get up in the morning and
What was the
go on.
best set you ever did?
Oh my gosh. I've produced shows for years. Been producing and hosting shows, and that's the easiest way for a comedian to create stage time for himself is by getting a venue, getting other comics, going up there and performing, and doing that on a weekly or bi-weekly or whatever, right? And so I was doing this. I had been doing this show at the Elks Club in Redwood City off and on for about a year and a half. It never really got a consistent following. One week it would be great and we'd have 10, 15, 20 people in a little bar. Other times it'd be a handful of people. But it was weird. So anyway, I was about to pull the plug on the show. I'll try to make a really long story short because we're going to jump into this with Noel, but I was going up there just to get my equipment. It was a night that I knew I had to perform, but here a couple of my comedians canceled on me. I didn't have another one booked. So it was basically going to be me and a couple of people, but they all canceled on me. And I'm like, well, screw it. I'm just going to go up there, tell them that this isn't really working out for me at this place, and we'll try again some other time. I got up there, and there was like 15, 20 people in this bar. They were waiting for comedy. They said, oh, actually, some of them were waiting for comedy. Other people would just happen to be there. And so a couple people greeted me and said, oh, great, you're doing comedy. And I said, well, actually, there's nobody else. Well, can you do a set for us at least? And I said, sure. And I started doing a set, and the 15, 20 people in the room, maybe a handful of people knew what I was doing. But by the time 15 minutes into my set, everybody was engaged. I was able to go and literally talk to every table and ask them what was going on. I started off with basic material about myself, my life, my kids, my then girlfriend, my parents, those kind of things, and people could start relating. I could say something about my parents and somebody go, ah, like they understood and they could relate. Or with my kids, part of my joke was about my kids either being gay or trans or something, and somebody else could relate to that and they audibly said something and we were having conversations. It was like I was basically working the crowd, but interlacing my material that I had. Before I knew it, I was already an hour in. I did an hour and 10 minutes. So I did 70 minutes. I walked away from there with almost $200 and everybody trying to get me drunk. And I was only right down the street from my house, but I'm like, yeah, I can't get this drunk. Everybody wanted to buy me a drink. Everybody stuffing 20s in my hand.
Nice.
And it was the greatest experience. I was like, wow, that's what my one-man show, that's what I want to do for my one-man shows. I want to be able to just go out and talk about life and have interaction with people.
And the success you got bred success. In other words, you knew you could do it once. That means you could do it at any given time.
Right. And yeah, it's
confidence, not success. That's
right.
What I meant.
Right. No, yeah, definitely the confidence that you can do it and that you're able to do those things. And I think we were just talking about it on another show yesterday, is that somebody was talking about, it's like you just like waiting for the time to be done. You're like, oh, what else do I got for you? Oh, let me see. So if you get a lot of it's like when you're on the radio and you say you don't have much to say. You're out of your element. You're nervous. You're whatever. But you should just be able to relax and drop. And matter of fact, we're going to try calling Noel right now. You guys are hearing the dial-in effects. Why? Because it's happening. Let's see if we can get Noel online. We'll see here. You guys get to listen to the dial-in. Sorry, I'll mute that partially so you don't have to hear it so loud. Joining us from where are you joining us from again, Noel?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the sound. Can you?
Sure. Where
It's
are
coming
you?
in
Where are
loud.
you calling in from? Where are you at?
I'm in the Los Angeles area.
Right on. So calling us from L.A. We got Noel Hind with us. Go ahead.
Noel, I have a surprise for you. I have an alternate cap today.
And we're gonna hold on. Let's get.
And
Yeah,
they,
he should be able to see you. Let me get a close up of you there, Zig. There. Let's get the Zig close up. There's your close up. You like that? He switched out his cap for you,
Yes, there you
just for
go.
you.
a New York Giant cap. We're going to talk about the New York Giants. Noel,
Okay, I'm still having problems with your. It's with your microphone. It's coming in too loud. Just let me play with my volume. Are we on
Sure.
the air right now, or are you recording?
Yes, we are. We're live. We're live. But that's okay. You can
Okay.
adjust your. You can
I just
adjust your
went to
volume.
my volume. You
beautiful.
still with me?
Yeah,
Still
absolutely.
with you. Noel,
I lost your picture.
no. When we
Should
were
be.
off the air, me and Paulie B, he asked me to tell me a little bit about Noel, and what I said was that you're a Renaissance man. Will you agree with that?
Oh, I suppose if as close to it as you get anymore these days, let's put it
Right.
that way. I
Well,
wouldn't I wouldn't use the
you
term for myself, but um, there we go. I got a better picture and better sound now.
Yay.
good.
So you're with us. Good.
Know to know you. I have to know about your dad a little bit, and I do, but tell the audience, um, he was a mystery writer.
Actually, he was a true crime writer. Um,
Oh,
the He started off in 1920 in Boston at the age of 17, and moved up there from Trenton, New Jersey, and went to work. He was looking for a job one day. Came into the Boston Post, and encountered the city editor who gave him a pencil, a pad, and said, "Go get a story, or don't come back. I'll give you a couple of days to get a story." Well, he went out, pounded the streets, and watched the Boston police going into a building, and just kind of followed them in, and stood in the corner of somebody had been murdered. It was somebody had murdered the uh, the illicit lover. A husband had murdered a guy who was having an affair with his wife, and there was blood all over the floor. And he stood there for so long that the blood coagulated to his feet, his shoes. He had trouble getting up, getting out of the room. It was several hours. And But he comes back. He has a story. They give it to rewrite, and the paper runs the story. And he got to come in for a second week. To flash forward a little bit, this was around January, I guess, of 1920. Flash forward a little bit, and he is called. Some big story starts to break, and one of the older reporters, and if you're 17, an older reporter is a guy who was like 21 or something. One of the older reporters said, "This big story, there's a robbery down in Braintree, a couple people gotten shot." So they all get into, what was then a new car. You can imagine it looked like something literally out of the 20s because it was. And Again, to flash forward, it becomes it was the armed robbery that began the Sacco and Vanzetti case in Braintree. So he's working with the reporters as a second or third guy to interview witnesses and things. Eventually, the same reporter grabs him off the street along about July of the same year, maybe it was June, and says, "There's a guy down in up in the north end of Boston who's giving like 25% a week interest on um, loans. He takes your money, he returns 25 percent
Bonjour.
in a week. And uh, they talk, they go down to, go up to North Boston, and the fellow's name is Charles Ponzi. So within a couple of months of starting, he was on Sacco and Vanzetti and Ponzi. Both cases, the Ponzi case played out very quickly. Sacco and Vanzetti took several years before they were executed for a crime that they were, let's say, tangential to. And he was launched as a crime writer, then continued in Philadelphia, New York, and morphed into magazines and then books into the 1960s. So there's a long answer to your short question.
Well, I see where you get it.
I'm sorry.
I see where you get it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it continues to fascinate me.
Okay. Now, what fascinates me about you is that you've taken some of his works and republished. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've helped complete some of his works. Am I correct?
Well, he always wanted to work on a memoir and um, stories that he had worked on. So I've basically picked out the three most important cases that he ever talked to me about, that he knew far more about than he could print in his lifetime. The first was the Ponzi case. The second was the Charles Lindbergh case, the kidnapping and the execution of Bruno Hauptmann, which of course was in the 1930s. And then in the 1940s, he covered a case in the Bahamas, which was widely known as the Sir Harry Oakes case, in which Oakes, who was a Canadian and British subject, was one of the wealthiest men in the world, and he was murdered in his home one night. I wrote it as a book called Ashes from a Burning Corpse, and uh, eventually my father published just the facts of the story. It might have been in the Saturday Evening Post, and it did not sit well with the powers that were in the Bahamas at the time. Again, this is wartime Bahamas. The governor of the Bahamas was the Edward the Eighth, the fellow who backed off on becoming king, and so there was a major attempt on my father's life around 1952. Somehow he was given poison, and it defied analysis for several weeks, and somehow he survived.
Wow.
So I write about stuff that's either fiction or baseball. So, to my knowledge, nobody's out to snuff me yet.
Well, the day is young. I say the day is young.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, I'm still working on
All
the
right.
front end of my life, the
Hey,
first 70 years.
no, you mentioned baseball. It's our first love. And you mentioned you have the New York Giant cap on, and I have
Hmm.
mine to match you.
There
So,
you go.
the saddest day of my life when I was 11 was when the Giants and Dodgers moved. Tell us what that did to the city of New York, how it destroyed their spirit. People don't believe it, but it did. It destroyed the spirit of a city.
Well, just as I think of it right here, and as you're posing the question, if you ask somebody who lived in the Bay Area, hey, what would it mean to the city if the Giants took off for Tampa and the A's took off for Montreal? And they would say, you mean leave us without any baseball teams at all? And I said, yeah, yeah, you can get them on TV. How's that? Or ask somebody from this area, the Los Angeles area. Suppose the Dodgers moved back to Brooklyn and the Angels took off for, I don't know, Virginia or something. How would that sit? Well, same thing, except the world was smaller in the 1950s. It was more intimate. Players walked to the ballpark. And all of that was just suddenly taken away. And some people will say, but the Yankees were still there. Well, um, like if you're an Angel fan now and the Angels moved away, are you going to become a Dodger fan? No, probably not. It takes a couple of generations to um, for those things to reorder. New York was because of the space and the confinement of the boroughs. Um, it was much, much more intimate. You had seven daily papers in the late 1950s. Um, the Brooklyn Eagle was gone. The Brooklyn papers were gone, but um, it blew apart the sports pages. And families were cut in half. There were people who say, "Oh, I'm never rooting for the Dodgers again." Other people say, "Well, I'll follow the games in the newspaper." It changed all of life in the city.
Yeah. Um, you wrote a book about it, basically.
Uh, I'm sorry.
You wrote a book about it.
Yeah, I've done a lot of baseball writing. I did work for Sports Illustrated when it was alive. I was an outside contributor, but the book you're referring to was The Giants of the Polo Grounds, which I wrote in the mid 1980s. It was published, I believe, in 1988. It was an editor's choice of the New York Times. And a couple of years ago, I discovered it was in a lot of people's rare book collections. So I set to work to do a revised edition. The book already ran about 400 pages, and I figured I'd cut some. I did cut some, but the new edition turned into about 650 pages. It's on Kindle. You can get it through Amazon. But what I did was I went back and I wrote more about um, the Polo Grounds itself and the other things that took place at the Polo Grounds. The Polo Grounds wasn't just where the New York baseball Giants played after from 1911 to 1957. They The Polo Grounds was the scene of Jack Dempsey's greatest fight. Was the scene of a lot of the other great prize fights of the 40s and 50s. It was the scene of bicycle racing. It was the scene of soccer. It was even the scene of an opera. Back around 1914. Annie Oakley, when she visited New York, put on a shooting exhibit. You had to be careful where you sat on that, but as you know, she was a pretty good shot. Um, so it was just a huge place, and wasn't just the revised edition wasn't just about the ball players or the teams or the standings. It was expanded to some of the women who were very prominent behind the scenes. Stories about the ownership, the political situation in New York, which was constantly changing, but the team basically ran um, within the political confines of the Democratic Party of New York City. It was the Democratic mayor, of course, Jimmy Walker, who okayed the Sunday baseball for around 1920, I think. Before that, there were no games on Sunday, and working people, of course, worked from Monday through Saturday. So it was impossible to go to a game or take your family to a game, particularly when there were no lights on the stadium yet. So that was that book.
Okay. You mentioned women ownerships or contributing to all of this. Joan Payson, who turned out to be the owner of the Mets, was sat on the board of directors, and when it came time to deciding the the move, was Horace Stoneham going to take them at that time to Minneapolis? That was the first choice. She was the only person on the board of directors who opposed that.
It might have been Donald Grant who you're thinking of, because Grant opposed it also. If there were two votes, it would have been Payson and Grant, but Payson and Grant were very close friends. So, yeah,
To
the
my recollection, it was Payson, but um, I haven't been wrong, but at 80 times today, so you can't go by that.
well, you're younger than I am, so your memory might be
No,
better.
I'm
I
not.
don't.
No, I'm not. I'm older than dirt. And
But you're the youngest pile of dirt we have in the studio.
in this at the moment.
Yeah, currently on the mound with the mound. Got
Uh,
it.
In any case, the overall point of what you're saying is accurate. That the resistance to the giants moving um, was part of the. There was resistance among the minority owners of the giants and the boards of on the board of directors, and that, of course, did eventually give birth to the Mets. I guess what 4 years later, 62.
yeah.
Um, the seasons, it was 58, 59, 60, and 61, where there was no National League baseball in New York.
Did you go to Yankee Stadium at that time at all?
Um, in Actually, I did. My father enjoyed going to Yankee Stadium more than the National League parks, um, for the simple reason that it was reputed to be safer. Um, and he always would buy box seats. What he said at the time was through the bank, which of course was a code from a scalper. Um, but it's funny, he didn't like the Yankees, but he liked Yankee Stadium. Try to wrap your head around that. The first game I ever went to at Yankee Stadium was the 6th game of the 1957 World Series. I'd never,
Milwaukee.
I'd never Milwaukee against Milwaukee. The Yankees won the game. You can still find it on YouTube. I've watched it a few times. I can almost see myself because we sat down. I can certainly see where I was because on the old newsreels, they had the key plays of the game, and one of them was a home run by Hank Bauer in, I think, the seventh inning that hit the foul pole in left field. And it was, whatever it was down the line, 310 feet, 315 maybe. More memorable. My father and I were sitting close to the foul pole in left field, but more memorable was a ball that Hank Aaron hit long about the middle of the game, fifth or sixth inning, um, which went into the left field bleachers. And I can still remember to this day watching the trajectory of that ball, just streaking out from where Aaron, right-handed hitter, obviously, at home plate, hit the thing. It seems to me, in my memory, it was never more than 20 or 30 feet in the air. And I think the left fielder was Hector Lopez. Might be wrong on that. Um, but he just turned and sort of trotted backwards, watching the ball, and it was into the several rows back into the bleachers. And I know, Ralph, you'll remember how far those left field bleachers are. It was to the right of the bullpen in left field.
Well, Yankee Stadium had that in common with the Polo Grounds. Unbelievable amount of acreage, and the great center fielders that from my time who played in those parks: DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, and Willie Mays. So we were blessed not only with ball clubs, but we had the true superstars of the game either on our teams or coming in to visit. There were only 8 teams. We had the likes of Stan Musial, Warren Spahn, Robin Roberts. We had incredible competition. And the rivalry between the Giants and Dodgers is the best rivalry in sports history. back
Uh,
then.
s- Certainly, American sports history. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, uh, absolutely. Going back all the way to well, even before the turn of the century, the rivalry, at least between Brooklyn and the Giants. Um, so I agree with you on that one.
Giants had a right to move. The city wasn't taking care of the park. Um, the neighborhood was absolutely changing. No question about that. People just didn't want to. You mentioned the safety of going to a ball game. Dodgers, on the other hand, why did they move? Could anything have been done? Could Robert Moses have stepped in? Or did O'Malley want to move from the get go and he was just playing along?
Yeah, I've written a lot about that era, the mid '50s in New York City and in the sports in New York City. And looking back on it, it's very hard to see any kind of attempt, legitimate attempt that O'Malley made to keep the Dodgers in Brooklyn. He was kept saying, "Oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But I'm going to have to do it." Hey, there was never several deals were given to him that were proposed to him that he could have accepted, could have worked with. The bottom line is, in the same way he moved his family from Brooklyn to Long Island in 1952 or so, he had no intention of staying in Brooklyn, just none. Um, some people will argue the point, but it becomes, to my mind, revisionist history. He was not interested. Um, you'd see these pictures of O'Malley sitting in Los Angeles or looking at the land before they actually made the move official. He doesn't look terribly heartbroken. He looks like he's anxious to get there.
No, they
Yeah.
they offered him the moon at that point. The one thing Walter O'Malley did, there used to be jokes. If you only had two bullets, who would you shoot? Hitler, Mussolini, or O'Malley. That that kind of stuff. He did do the one nice thing of his lifetime. He took care of camping. He had a benefit, uh, 70 some thousand people. Um, he donated the proceeds to taking care of camping for the rest of his life. And those who aren't familiar, the year they moved, the winter that the Dodgers and Giants moved, Roy Campanella, the great catcher, was involved, left his liquor store in Brooklyn, and drove off an icy road without a seatbelt. There were no seatbelts at that time. And tragically, he was um, quadriplegic for the rest of his life. As a kid, as an 11-year-old kid, they were moving, teams were moving, and Campy gets hurt, and it was tragic. When a team moves, it's the kids that suffer the most, and the elderly people, like my dear old self now. And Oakland is a good example. Oakland is moving its team, presumably to Las Vegas. That hasn't been really settled and won't be until the shovels are in the ground because there's a lot of people in Las Vegas, like the teachers union. You could afford to buy a ball club, but you can't afford to pay the teachers. Um, Cities should have eminent domain. That if an owner wants to sell, he can sell, but he doesn't have to move. And if he wants to move, sell to somebody who wants to keep them in their backyard. That's my rant on that. But
Don't hold your breath on that one, though.
no, I won't. I won't, and haven't. And that it's horrible. That's a major loss as a kid. Stuck with me
Yeah.
through life. People
And for example, yeah, not to interrupt you, but you're much more familiar with the Oakland situation than I am. But are you seeing any kind of serious attempt by the Oakland ownership to keep the city there,
no, they don't want to.
keep the team?
No, they want to move.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
anything Fisher came out with something in the paper the other day. We wanted to. We're sorry to have to leave. Fisher wanted to leave. Never showed up at a game. No one ever saw him at a game. He's a multimillionaire. He just wanted to make more money. It's greed, and it's a societal thing at this point. The greed, not enough to have $1 million. You got to have two or five. And that, I don't know where that comes from, but it's it's not just baseball. It's big business, and the corruption and the greed in big business is runs rampant, and they're given permission to do this by a corrupt Congress who take money for the NRA, for instance, um, while kids are being killed, and I don't understand what we've become as as a society, and can this be reversed? Your opinion?
I agree with you.
Do you see any hope for reversal of the trend of greed and corruption running this country?
Yeah. Um, it's always been there, and it probably always will be. Um, so there's not much I can add to that.
Okay. What's your next project? What are you working on?
Um, well, I continue. As you know, I write spy stories. The first one of a long series was called "Flowers from Berlin," and I try to. I've been continuing that the most, and I'll have another uh, uh, episode, if you want to call it that, the sixth one in that series later in the year. It's called Revolt in Berlin. But I've basically been following the same character who's a U.S. intelligence agent in his career, which started in the late 1930s when he went to Nazi Germany um, to assess the situation. Let's put it that way. Then returned in 1943 to escort a young woman out of the country, and then returned during the airlift. In 1948-49. So I'm continuing his career for 25 years, and there'll be about a dozen books in the series. So one of those is on the docket. And I also have a baseball book in progress, which I'm not really announcing yet. It has to do with Brooklyn Dodger history, and that I hope will be out next summer. But I'm have to complete a shorter work for Saber, which is related to that subject. So um, that's what's keeping me busy, aside from the booze bottles that you see over my shoulder.
I was going to
Well,
ask you for a ginger beer, but that's okay.
yeah. Let me ask you this. Was there anything that you wish you had written about and didn't? Or was there anything, or put in your book and didn't? Anything in any of your books that you wish you hadn't put in?
Um, well, a lot of the books, if I'm hearing your question properly, um, a lot of the books, when I republish them, I re edit them. So I do them a little differently. And I've been known to like tear a book apart and just completely revise it and bring it up to date. Um, the one book that I've sort of been putting off for a couple of decades is the third installment in the trilogy based on my father's work, which was his involvement with the Lindbergh case, because we talked about that case quite a bit. My father died 50 years ago this month, and so I was like 27 when he died, and there were only a few years when he would really talk to me openly about his career. And he used to tell me stories about the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby and how the body that was found couldn't possibly have been um, the actual child, and just all the inconsistencies of the case. Yeah, and of course, at the end of the case, a man was executed for having acted alone to kidnap the child and to write the ransom notes and everything. It was complete nonsense. Um, Bruno Hauptmann, who was the person who was executed in, I think, 1936 or 38 for having masterminded and carried out the case by himself, was a professional carpenter in Germany, in addition to being a petty crook. Uh, as evidence in the trial, the ladder was introduced, the ladder that was used by the alleged sole kidnapper to abduct the Lindbergh child from the window, and it was terribly made. It was not the work of anybody who was a skilled carpenter. Then you got into an issue just with the physical kidnapping itself, of how somebody could bring in a um, heavy uh, ladder, put it up to the window, climb up to the window, force the window open, abduct the child, carry the child without holding the ladder. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
It was,
and it was a second floor window, correct?
I think it was.
It was. It was a really tall ladder and it was a really bad ladder. Let me ask you this because I remember being stuck on the Lindbergh kidnapping
Yeah.
stuff. Is there
It's,
any DNA? Is there any known DNA of the Lindberghs?
um, I don't know, but I can tell you this: when the child eventually, as you probably know, a body was found.
Right.
Okay, it was brought to Lindbergh, who said, "That's yes, that's the remains of my son." And the question was asked, "Should the doctor look at it?" And he said, "Absolutely not. That's my son." And the body was cremated, I think, within hours.
Wow. If that doesn't scream
Yeah.
conspiracy. So
What
yeah, the
happened?
reason I say it is because if there really was a child out there that made it past that, if that was not the body of the child, if there had actually been any DNA from either Mr. or Mrs. Lindbergh, just imagine running that through today's DNA stuff. They
Yeah.
found the Golden State Killer 30 years later or something like that based on some DNA that his daughter went and got like ancestry.com or 23andme, and I found my father after 56 years or 54 years. So it can be done if they had it.
That's an interesting question. Whether anybody really wants to do that or has the legal authority to do it, I don't know. My father published, when he first covered the case, I believe he covered it for the Trenton Times, and he was printing what was really going on in the trial room. And the editor came over to him and said one day, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm printing what." He was like, my father was like 30. He was born in 1903, so he was probably about 32 years old at the time. So my father said, "Well, I'm printing what's going on at the trial." And the editor said, "That's not what people want to read. Don't do that." They wanted him to go with the official story. Hauptmann, German, villain, murdered the son of an American hero. That's the storyline they wanted. So he continued to do that, and he got fired from the paper and taken off the case, and they put somebody else in. The reason I'm mentioning that is as years went by, many people contacted him. And then in the 1970s and 80s, when there were still some people around, started to contact me trying to see what was in his files, um, to see where they led. And he published a very prominent magazine article in 1957 called Why the Lindbergh Case Will Never Be Solved. And he basically spelled out everything that was wrong in the case, or at least wrong with the conviction of Hauptmann. It was so flagrant that in the trial, admitted as evidence, was that Hauptmann received a phone call from a co-conspirator. All right. And yet the jury decided that Hauptmann was the sole person involved. So they put in incriminating evidence against him, claiming he had a phone call in which he was discussing the case, and then they concluded that he had acted alone.
Wow.
Why didn't his
you almost have to work this case from the end backwards. So what's the motivation? Why would, let's say, the Lindbergh family want to hide their child?
well hide the child,
Yeah,
or
like
just
so let's say he didn't die and Charles Lindbergh really didn't want the doctor to look at it to confirm it really wasn't his son.
I will put forth one theory.
Okay.
Something involving negligence or worse happened within the Lindbergh household, and the child was died. Okay.
Right.
So the body then disappeared, and this half-assed story of a kidnapping was hastily concocted,
Including
so
the really shittily made ladder. So,
yes.
so that kind
Yeah.
of coincides with that.
So, and by the way, a day or two after the kidnapping, one of the household staff, a woman who I think was from either Ireland or England, I haven't looked at the case for several years, but committed suicide rather than talk to the police or
And
talk to any
this was one of
reporter.
the housekeepers that could have been sitting there, could have been the nanny to the baby. Who knows?
Yes.
Could
Yeah.
have been
And
her negligence.
Could have been her negligence, or it could have been, yeah, or she could have
or it,
witnessed something.
or she could have been one of the co-conspirators. Whatever. I don't know.
But it's all
However,
very intriguing, and that goes back to what, the 20s?
I'm sorry.
When was the Lindbergh kidnapping? Wasn't it like the late 20s? Like right around.
I think it was like 1931 or
I
32.
was thinking it was right around the
Again,
Depression.
again, I haven't prepped on that today, and I haven't looked at it for several years. Um,
Well,
I
you've got
think
us intrigued. Now we want to see this book. Now you have to complete that book.
I, yeah, it's in the pipeline.
There you go.
However, let me just go back to address another part, a subtle point about your question about why Lindbergh would have misidentified the body that was brought in. Why was a body brought in? There was so much pressure on the New Jersey State Police to solve the case that there were extra police on the roads in New Jersey at night, stopping trucks, stopping anything that looked like it could be moving a body around. Okay? This is prohibition.
Right.
And organized crime in New Jersey did not particularly appreciate. That's when they were moving their liquor.
Right.
And they were getting stopped and stuff was getting seized. And there was pressure on the very corrupt governor, Harold Hoffman of New Jersey, to wrap the case up. So shortly, when this kept going on, from somewhere came a body. Lindbergh identified it. The body was cremated, and the trucks continued to roll.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, we're up against it time wise. Would you come back time and time again,
Sure.
as you have on my podcast over the years? You are one of those who are both passionate and knowledgeable. And
Next time I'll bring you. I'll pour you a drink.
There you go.
and I'll get you high. I'll get you a little smoke too.
That's a 15-year-old Irish whiskey there.
All right.
Oh,
We'll
wow.
call you on that one now.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about coming up and spending time in the studio with us?
You know,
San Francisco.
where's your studio?
It's in downtown San Francisco at the corner of 7th and Market in San Francisco.
Because I've having discussions these days with the Giants about doing a book signing at their private club, at the Dugout Club.
Yeah.
And it might be maybe toward the end of May.
We would love to cover that
Oh,
event
wow.
with you.
We will be all over that.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm sort of waiting to hear whether we can pull it together. I did a signing there right before COVID, and it was a lot of fun, which is another way of saying I sold a lot of books, and uh, it was just a great evening. The Yankees were there, and the Yankees are coming in again, so they're sort of billing it as their New York weekend. So that club is going to be packed, which is nice.
Hey, I just got to mention one thing to you. You were talking about Hank Bauer, the memories of Hank Bauer. I would go to the ballpark with my grandfather, sit in the right field grandstand in the first row. Hank Bauer was the right fielder. Don Mueller was the right fielder when we sat in the Polo Grounds, same spot. Hank Bauer did so well in the World Series. Everybody talks about Bobby Richardson days and all the great Yankee stars. Hank Bauer's World Series performances were absolutely great. So, a war hero, Hank Bauer was, and a piece of trivia, Hank's older brother was killed in um, one of the big campaigns. And Hank always said that his brother was a much better ball player than him.
Yeah,
Imagine how great
absolutely right.
he must have been.
Hank held the consecutive game hitting streak
In the
in the
World
World
Series,
Series
right, right,
for many years.
for many years. So, rest in peace, Mr. Bauer,
Yeah,
and your dad too. Rest in peace to him.
I'm sorry.
Oh, he was saying rest in peace to your father too, because it's 50 years this
Oh,
month.
okay.
So,
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
All right.
and thank you
Okay.
for joining us again, Noel Hind, author in LA, and you're going to come up and see us. We would love to have you live in studio, or at least catch up, and we're going to hold you to that shot. And
If you just look on Amazon, how many books do you have on there?
I've written, if that was the question, about 36, 37, something like that now.
There, I mean,
and we can get all your books on Amazon, or where do we catch everything that you're doing, Noel?
If again, first name Noel, Noel Hynd. If you run my name through an Amazon search, you will find just about everything.
Right.
wow.
Thank you again for joining us, Noel. We really appreciate you.
My pleasure, and we'll see you again. I'm looking forward to it. Take care.
Love the cap.
Thanks again. All right, that was Noel Hind from LA. Man, that was fun. Always a
Well,
fun show with you, Dig. It's always organic in
so to
multiple
speak.
ways,
So to speak.
so to speak. It's almost time for us to take that little break. Which I did save that. Where did I save that? I saved that for us. I actually have. Where is it? I want to say it's our video. Here's our little break video. Let's see. Um, we'll play this, but this is really gonna be our little. This is our way we're gonna go between segments. But right now we're gonna be signing off this way. What do we got having next week for us?
Next week, to be announced.
I like that.
Nothing's firm, but I'm hoping to get a Met maven in the studio,
Okay.
and we'll talk about my beloved New York Mets.
All right. There we go. On Zig in the Zone.
Zig in the Zone.
We'll see you guys next week. Tuesday, 11 to 1.
All right, guys, it's time to take a break. We'll be back right after this.